This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
So this is the August 22nd meeting of the Southampton Public Safety Building Committee. We'll call the meeting to order. I don't see anybody from the public other than our meeting, or our committee. Previous minutes, we did not end up meeting on August 8th, so these are the July 24th minutes, I believe. Did everyone get those? Any comments or questions? I know Charlie had one comment.
What was his comment, do you remember? Because it was probably when I first sent them out.
It was when you first sent them out. It had to do with the charge, I think.
Oh, yes, what was going to be coming up at town meeting? Was it for the feasibility study? What was the funds that were going to be requested for town meeting, I think? Or at town meeting? That's my recollection.
I think you're right. Let me see. Oh.
There's a question from Charlie. Are we looking for funding for construction and design or feasibility study?
Okay, was that in relative to the minutes? Or no? Was that a question that came about after the minutes were written? Or was that something that he's questioning about the way the minutes?
Email that he said he questioned regarding the draft minutes.
Oh, okay.
And your response, I believe, Rini, was that we would address it here, not over the computer.
Yeah, you'd said, I believe the intent is design and construction. If it's not clear, we can edit at 8/8, which obviously that's today because we didn't meet then. So I think the intent, I think it makes sense to go all for one chunk, design and construction personally, because design's kind of a lot of money if you do a full design and then don't get approval for the construction.
We don't have any idea do we have an idea of what the construction is going to be?
I think the important thing is what was the thinking at the time of the meeting, because this is just the minutes reflecting the meeting.
Right.
So if we want to get into a discussion about that today in general, that's fine, but what was the intent at the time? And where is it referenced in the minutes? Does anybody know? I'm looking at him, just trying to decide what he was questioning.
I don't think it's really specified in the minutes.
Let's see it.
Oh, is it on the second page? We hope we have a request from funding for next May's town meeting. Is that the area?
What is that? Just one of the bullet?
It's a bullet point of 3 above number 7 on the second page.
3 above number 7.
So it says a request for funding, but it doesn't specify design or design and construction.
We hope to have a request for funding by next May's town meeting. I think we've already talked about possibly the feasibility being funded, or at least submitted application to ARPA funds. So I'm assuming that this has to do with construction.
Can you just insert funding for construction? Is that what the intent was?
Is that what everybody wants me to do?
I wasn't here, so.
I think if it just says funding, I think that is something we need to discuss further. Maybe today or at another meeting, but I think that what's written here captures what we discussed. I don't think we specify very far exactly what it was.
And we'll just leave it as is then.
You would have to have a design before you go to construction, so yes, it's either design first and then construction, or it's design and construction.
Right. Okay, any other comments on the minutes? Or do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor of approving the minutes as written?
Aye.
I abstain.
Okay.
Absent.
The next thing I have is the senior center status update.
5 proposals came in. 2 were selected for interview. Next, I don't know if we have a date yet, but we were hoping for...
We do.
Is it September 1st?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
Thursday, September 1st, I think?
Yes.
4 o'clock and 6 o'clock p.m. Abacus and EDM were the 2 companies that were selected on the proposal. just so you know, process-wise, all the committee members submitted their scoring to Ed, similar to ours. It's basic, whatever we call the first level, mandatory, whatever. And the second one was the second level, Ed, I forget what you call it, advantageous or highly advantageous down to not advantageous. So anyway, the two of them were selected, and that's the plan, is to interview both of them 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock on September 1st.
Abacus has confirmed their availability for the first. Still waiting to hear back from EDM.
Oh, okay.
With regards to the senior center, has there been, I know they had in the RFQ one other property still to be determined. Have they decided, have they had any more conversation on the properties that, based on the letter responses?
Yeah, the actual letters were shared with the committee. So there were 3 letters that came in, Gallagher, Labrie. Yes, they want to talk to the town about both sites. No to Murphy. And so Chris Fowles, chair of the select board, is reaching out to Marmon Keystone and Goral to see what their level of interest is. We had not originally heard back from them within 30 days, but then she was driving by and it occurred to her when I just called a realty company, because the Marmon Keystone's land is for sale.
Right.
So then once the select board said, sure, that sounds like a good idea, then it made sense to just reach out to the one other property that's still unanswered. So I think that's her plan, right, Ed?
Sounds like what I...
Yeah, I think that's what she was going to do.
This all refers to the senior center.
Well, no, it's actually for both.
The realtor has been reaching out to me. I haven't, all I said was it's in discussion. I haven't brought up
really?
anything, so if you need his contact information. I can
Yeah, you could just let Chris know, maybe. So I think, is there anything else, Ed, from the senior center group? Last meeting was almost exclusively reviewing the letters that had come in. And, oh, by the way, Chris also reached out to both Gallagher and Labrie and asked whether or not, please identify the spokesperson for the property. And, yeah, so we're just moving forward.
Okay, and so is the intent, I guess this kind of goes into the next one, status of potential lots. Is the intent to set up meetings after we get back from Goral and Marmon Keystone to discuss?
Yeah, I think she wrote back and said that we'll be moving forward with next steps. She just wanted to let them know that we got the request back and we look forward to talking to them. And so there'll be a plan once I think she hears from these other 2. But I think within the next month or 2, I think the plan would be to reach out and engage them in discussion about their property.
So is there a thought process there in terms of, will the select board talk to both this committee and the senior center building committee, and then the select board meet with each of those and try? I just was curious with all the committees, how the communication's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that the plan will be to follow up with whoever is as interested in talking to the select board, and then I don't know, what do you think, Ed? Will it be referred to the committees for a joint meeting, or I don't know what the plan would be, to be honest with you. I think that she was just right now confirming who the spokesperson was and reaching out to the 2 properties we haven't heard from.
Okay. A joint meeting might make sense, but maybe to come up with a list of questions between the senior center,
it makes sense.
building committee, and ourselves first, to just figure out the best way to move forward cleanly when there's multiple interested parties.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anything else, Ed?
Not that I can think of. And I think once we have an answer from the other 2, that all the other pieces will fall into place as far as joint meetings or whatever.
Yeah. And the meeting on Thursday, the first, if the other firm confirms, is an open meeting. So I don't know what I know EDM built Hadley and South Hadley, and Abacus, more not in the area, but they've done work in Holyoke and Amherst.
Anything else on the senior center or status of potential lots? Okay, the next thing, I'm kind of just overnosed. I have the August 8th agenda since we hadn't met on that day. That's what I'm following. The RFQ, this draft RFQ I sent out, just to let everyone know I did submit the ARPA application for funds. So I don't know, Ed, is there anything I need to do, next steps on that, or?
Now, did you give it to Judy or send it to Judy?
Oh, no, I emailed it to you. I'm supposed to send it to Judy
When did you email it to me?
a couple weeks ago before our last meeting. I can resend it.
I'll have to check and see if I printed it. I probably printed it and gave it to Judy.
Okay.
Because I know there's a couple in there waiting for the next round for the select board to check, but I'll double check on it.
Okay, sounds good, thank you.
Yes, I think it's on the agenda, not for the next meeting, but in September.
Yes.
Okay. So then the big thing for today was going through this draft RFQ, and I know, Mark, you'd had some comments.
Yeah, just did a quick review on it.
And then, I don't know, did everyone get the draft RFQ?
Yep.
So I thought we'd just flip through this. A lot of the dates we'll obviously have to finalize to some degree based on when we send this out. So the first page I just had highlighted that submission deadline.
Could I ask a question about 2? Did we decide that, I think we discussed that a little bit, about 1 original, 10 hard copies, and 1 electronic flash drive? Is that still what we wanted to say?
Do we need 10 hard copies of the proposal, I suppose? Any thoughts? Does everyone want one?
What happened with the senior one? We loaded up into the Google Drive anyway, so.
Yeah, we ended up, because one of the companies had asked if we would reconsider that for sustainability reasons. I think we changed it in the addendum to, I think there was 2 original hard copies and 2 flash drives. And then first thing we learned was that a couple of them I could download from the flash drive and email to the committee members, but a couple of them were too large to email, so that's when we got into utilizing the Google Drive and putting it out there so that members of the committee could access it that way.
Okay. I think that's fine, 2 hard copies and 2 flash drives. What does everyone else think?
I'll have to review it as a hard copy.
Okay.
And so, as long as I can have one of those 2 hard copies, that's fine.
Okay. Would anyone else like a hard copy? There's no... And do we need one for here, or?
Yeah, you need one for records or someone else.
You take.
Come in and look at one.
I think you need one for public to view.
Okay. Let's go with 3 then,
Thank you.
just so we have, I don't know. So we'll go with 3 hard copies and 2, just, so the reason for the 2 flash drives was just kind of in case, or just, is there a reason for the 2 flash drives, or just, it doesn't hurt, I mean, it doesn't cost them almost
doesn't
anything.
hurt, no.
It says, oh, okay, you're changing it to 2.
Especially if you end up with someone that ends up having issues downloading them from the Google Drive or something.
Right, you could give it, yeah.
Another mechanism.
So
out
it's
there.
also going to be loaded onto the Google Drive? That would be the idea?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you guys want to talk dates now, or do we want to wait on dates until we have, okay. So we'll just go over the dates. Anything else on the submission instructions?
Nope.
Anything on submission requirements? I didn't really change much here. I don't think I changed anything here from the senior center.
Just to go ahead.
No, please.
C, I think it's just complex, it's not possessive.
Oh, yeah.
I have a point of discussion on B, C. The designer must have experience with at least 5 buildings or projects within the past 10 years. And this committee, so I'm wondering if that's too stringent,
If that's
asking too much, because this committee hasn't been able to think of any, or maybe 1, public safety complex that of a similar size that has been built around here in the past 10 years. And it seems to me as though that might be too stringent a requirement.
Maybe it's right preferred.
Well, Williamsburg had 5 respondents, and that would mean that, in the past 10 years, 25 new buildings. I know we're not comparing apples to apples with size-wise, but I'm just saying that it seems like a lot of public safety building experience within a very short period of time. That's 1 every 2 years for each applicant. Now, I have reviewed Williamsburg's too, and although I don't like the where theirs is written, they don't have the 10-year. They state 5 years experience with public safety buildings, and I'm just wondering if we could word that so that it would garner more submissions.
One thing we did, we learned a couple things from the senior center one. One was, yes, there seemed to be a stretch of, okay, whether they had actually 5 or not in the 10-year expanse, and the other was because of these similar sized communities or of similar size. What is similar size? Are you referring to the size of the community? And do you want to give a parameter of like 4,000 to 9,000 population or something? Or do you want to give some type of size, like square footage parameters or type of thing in there? But yeah, we that was one issue, and then the other issue was one of the requirements, which was either a yes or no, was the firm has been in business at least 10 years.
Oh, hi.
Okay.
Yeah.
We ran into one that responded. We got into probably a 15-minute, at least maybe 20-minute discussion on whether, because the principal had businesses in different names. And this is the last one that was established, and it looks like, and they didn't make the interview list, or would have to check, but it looked like the last incorporation under what this name was 9 years. So it didn't meet the 10-year criteria, but this individual that was, the president, the principal, or whatever, that had firms under similar names, if you followed that back, you might say the individual as a principal had experience for more than 10 years, but the firm, so you might want to think about how you design, put the firm in there, you might put design firm or whatever, so. But those are some things that we did learn from that RFQ.
As I was thinking about it a little bit, I wondered if we could just eliminate the 10 within the past 10 years, because any designer who's built 5 public safety complexes is experienced, and there could be good designers that have built 3 in the past 10 years and 2 prior to that and not be qualified. It just seems too limiting to me.
I agree.
But the other thing is that what we found too was that it also says feasibility studies. So some of them were feasibility studies and some of them were construction.
I understand that.
So it's possible they submitted a feasibility study but were not selected.
Or it hasn't happened yet. There were a lot that were in
It
process.
still seems very stringent to me,
Yeah.
but I'm just one member. I understand that.
I don't disagree. I also think, so we kind of capture some of it by saying B, they have to have 10 years of experience. So I don't know that we need, I agree that I think we should strike within C that they have to be within the past 10 years. And then do we want with A, based on what Ed said, to say that the designer must have been in business for a minimum of 10 years? Do we want to change anything with that? If there's a firm that's been around 8 years, if you have a firm that's been around 8 years, it likely was started by someone who has 20 years of experience
Right.
somewhere else. That doesn't mean they're not qualified.
Yeah.
I don't know why we wouldn't just write preferred.
Yeah.
The preferred doesn't fit these parameters.
Doesn't fit parameters.
No. These particular ones are hardcore. Either you meet them
Yeah, these are exclusionary.
These aren't like getting into highly advantageous, not advantageous, or, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I just,
And it's pretty strict, that's what I realized.
And-
That
and
you
one
can't
of the-
just say, as a committee, well, yeah, we'll change that. I mean, it's,
And some of the reasons for doing this type of stuff isn't necessarily that you want to see that 10 years experience or whatever. You want to see that the firm has been stable for that 10 years. It's another way of saying, hasn't gone bankrupt in the last 10 years or whatever, or, the person's lost his, certification or license to basically to do that work, the engineering or the architectural work in Massachusetts, and then, regained it and started up again, so.
is that addressed somewhere else in this study or our request? I thought so.
I think those are good points, but I'm just wondering, we're talking sort of, not yet post, but sort of post-COVID. Would that affect any of these industries if someone said, I lost my business because of COVID issues and therefore I can't meet these criteria? I mean, are we eliminating somebody on the potential that we wouldn't normally eliminate them for?
If you did that, I think you'd have to hire about the individual, not the firm. I think you want a firm, because they have to be someone who...
Okay, well, that's B. Designer is the individual, must be a mass registered architect or professional engineer. I don't know, I'm just, is it too stringent, or are we?
frankly, I'm glad that we only got 5 proposals because it took a long time to read them, and one of them was a couple 100 pages long almost. How much? The long one that wouldn't upload was... So I think we can, I would support relaxing it some, maybe 15 years, but I wouldn't, I don't want to read 20 proposals.
Yeah, so just to clarify something, the term designer references the architectural or engineering design firm chosen to perform the work.
So it's the firm, not the individual.
Yeah, in paragraph 1. So, just because I wasn't sure of anything.
Where are you now? In
If you
one?
go back to one, it
one,
defines,
okay.
the last sentence defines designer as the firm.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's a good point, yeah.
It's good.
So we probably want somebody well established, so we'll leave the 10 years as A, I would say for now. The designer must either be a Massachusetts registered architect and/or Massachusetts professional engineer with at least 10 years of experience in public safety, building, complex design and construction. I think that's important. Mm-hmm. And then the question I think we get down to is how many complexes and/or in how many years? I tend to agree that that's a little stringent. Again, we don't have much data on how many there have been in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Right.
Did anybody write back on the listserv? You said you were going to put a message out on the listserv to see if any of the small administrators...
Oh, I did, yeah, got some comments back from people that have either built them or are building them now, but none of them either went through the feasibility study or the feasibility study was done before they got there, and no one has any records of an RFQ or what have you.
These numbers had come from the senior center, and I wonder if there's been more senior centers recently, partially because they're a newer, maybe not, I don't know, I'm just making that up. If there's been a lot of fire stations and police stations that have been around for so long versus, I don't know if that's accurate or not.
I mean, this could just be a guess, but I think there were a lot of public safety complexes that were built after 9/11, and I think the demographic shift now is making it more likely that people are building senior centers.
So if there were a lot after 9/11, maybe
think so?
just increasing it to
Chief?
50.
Do you think that's reasonable?
That's certainly...
I think so.
Okay.
I know a lot of architectural firms used to design fire stations frequently, and it seemed like the last couple of years.
Yeah, there
hasn't
hasn't
been
been
as
any,
many.
If you're going to extend it further beyond 10 years, mightn't it just be struck? Just a question.
Or what Chief Workman said, which is...
You should talk about striking C?
No, I'm
Or just
talking
the
about
10 years?
tracing, just striking within the past 10 years, stopping in similar sized communities, period.
What do you think, Ann?
Well, then, if we got a proposal, would we then say, well, wait a minute, this person doesn't have a lot of experience? And somebody would say, wait a minute, you never said anything about years of experience. If we
No,
had
this
totally...
is not experience. At least they still have 5 years of, they have 5 projects
Okay.
under their belts, but it's not necessarily within the past 10 years.
Right,
The
could
only
be-
concern-
Could be 15, 20, or 25 years.
The only concern with totally striking it that I would have is you're getting a different batch of people potentially. So say they were built in the
Oh, I see,
80s
yeah.
and the 90s.
Mhm.
A lot of those folks who were senior designers at the time may have retired. In theory, that would
That's
just be,
a good- that's
if the
a good-
firm, say, has been around for 80 years,
Okay.
if you say 15 or 20, you're likely still getting some of the same people.
Yeah, that's a good
Essentially,
point.
it's the best bid, right? That's really comes down to is the cheapest bid
What's that?
for if they meet the qualifications, then it's going to go to the person with the lowest bid. No.
No, there's like a scoring.
It's which one, it's on the scoring on part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the money doesn't,
So we could just strike it and assume they're going to get scored
So
out.
if they're going to
if-
get scored, then I
Yeah.
just have more applicants.
Does anyone have an issue with striking the within the past 10 years, but leaving the other portion?
no, that's fine.
Okay.
Because when you're presented with 5 versus 12 of those responses, Ian, and 6 of them are 200 pages long, and you have 2 weeks to score all of them, you might think differently about that.
That's the person with a lot of
for-
experience in that, I get it.
I mean, there was
point is
either
we're gonna get
27
more.
or 28
Yeah.
people that asked for the information and,
Yeah.
the senior center feasibility study.
That's a good point.
I mean, with all the building codes.
If even half of those had come in, and fortunately, I'm not a voting member, so I was exempt from scoring those. I just had to compile a summary, but ask Rini how long it probably would have taken to go through.
Took me a full day
Really?
to read them all. Well, one of them was, how long? 100 and,
It was almost, you're right. it was
almost 200 pages
yeah.
long.
All right.
What about the other extreme, if you only get 2 submissions, is that enough?
Yeah, that's a good question too.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll just get 2, to be honest.
Let's just compromise and say either 15 or
Just from
20.
the reaction to the amount of individuals that asked for the packages at the senior center.
So 20 years gets us pretty close to 9/11. So if we're trying to capture the wave that happened after that, 20 years would capture it, but doesn't go too far. Do we want to do that?
So compromise, don't strike it, just increase it to 20 years.
Yeah. Yep.
15 or 20. 20 seems like a long time.
It does.
Maybe
15 then.
15.
I think 15 is,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Middle ground. And it is narrowing it down to this size community. I mean, some of these people, architects build, New York City style or are facing are very qualified. You shouldn't automatically eliminate them because they haven't done 5 in this size town.
And not only that, the principals, some of the, one firm, I think, was 5 employees, but they subcontract with, electrical engineer and this one, and cost estimator. So you're reading through all of the information from all the subcontractors. And it was just a lot.
That's requested in here, is it not?
Yeah.
I suspect that the Massachusetts being registered or a professional engineer in Massachusetts is really critical. But I will say, as the size of a town, having just been in Vermont for the last 2 weeks, they're all small towns up there, and there's some beautiful public safety complexes that I ran across. What if we want to draw from the professionals that work there? We can't because they wouldn't be registered in the state of Massachusetts.
They have to be registered to work in this state.
I see.
Yeah, but
They can be in Vermont. I was registered in 6 states.
Oh, I see, I
Live
see.
in one state, be registered in multiple
Okay,
states.
so does our outreach go to Vermont or Western New York State or something?
I think it's posted on
Or New Hampshire or something.
bidding website or something.
Okay.
One of the firms is primarily out of Connecticut that would go, but they have an office in Massachusetts, but they made a point of saying we're up on all the Massachusetts codes.
Okay.
But they can still do business.
Okay, that answers.
Okay. Anything else here in submission requirements? And
And C, you got that, the grammar of it.
Yeah, I got that, thank you. And then, so we are going to leave just similar size and just leave that up for, I think it's fine, just clarify. Okay. The procurement schedule, I think we need to just leave this kind of to last. Any comments on the design of it, I guess, or anything? Background and existing conditions. So I had kind of amended the last portion of this first paragraph to say, 2 town-owned properties and multiple privately owned properties have been evaluated and selected by the PSBC and approved by the select board for evaluation for public safety complex. But then I had a note of how many private properties do we want to say in here? The senior center had said 2 yet to be identified. So because we're saying 2 town-owned, this is kind of for the first phase of analyzing or evaluating the properties. We have 2 town-owned, and then do we want to say 2 private? We'll narrow it down to 2 before they do the work.
If I'm a designer, do I really care whether it's town-owned or private? I'm going to evaluate whatever properties you tell me to evaluate. As long as they know the number of properties, I think it's more important.
Right.
Specifying whether it's town-owned or privately owned. From a designer getting the proposal and saying, what am I
Yeah, you don't
supposed
really
to do?
care.
It's going to be our decision or the town's decision which parcels are going to pursue.
Sorry.
Oh, good.
I think my recollection is that we addressed this a little bit in the last meeting, and I thought maybe on the privately owned parcels, possible wording was 2, because we have 2, and another as yet identified. I think that was suggested back then, leaving it open to add another property if it comes available. Because it might, because if Marmon Keystone or the Gorals. That's just my recollection.
Yeah.
It may be incorrect.
No, I think we had said something similar. So, Mark, my only comment about the town-owned is what the senior center did in theirs is they included the addresses for the town-owned, and then for the private, they said we haven't determined them yet, so we're not sharing the addresses, which was the only reason it was, so if you wanted to start to look in Google Maps or whatever to get an idea, they were only giving the information out for the town-owned properties, which I assume maybe what we'd want to do as well.
Yeah, one of the feasibility studies made a point, I think, because of that, because we identified a couple of town-owned places, Old Town Hall, current Town Hall. They made a point of saying that their feasibility study included evaluating whether to knock down the entire thing or to renovate the existing building. So that might be something that one firm might say, knowing what we're looking for. What do you think? Do you think that it's worth indicating that they're town-owned and private?
I would be interested in knowing what the parcels are I'm going to be looking at.
Yeah.
And maybe in beneficial, say some of the parcels have existing structures which may be renovated or removed and replaced. That's part of the feasibility study on their part.
So
Maybe just saying some parcels are blank slates and some have buildings which need to be evaluated as to, I don't know how much we don't get into detail on that.
are you suggesting that you just want to strike the differentiation between private and town-owned? And that would it work just to say up to 5 different parcels?
I'm just thinking if I'm receiving this
Right,
document,
I
what
understand.
difference does it make to me who owns the parcel? The client, which the town is going to tell me I need X number of parcels evaluated for a
Right.
feasibility study. And whether or not that parcel has a town building on it or a private building, or I'd be more interested whether or not it had a building that we need to consider removing and renovating, or it's a blank, flat piece of property. I might want to know that. but I don't think the ownership is crucial to
Okay.
the applicant.
So do we want to just say 5 properties within town have been evaluated and selected by the Public Safety Building Committee and approved by the Select Board for evaluation for a public safety complex? And do we want to say 4 or 5 or 4?
Or
Maybe up to 5?
Up to 5.
Five, yeah.
I think that's better.
Okay. I just updated the composition of the committee.
Council is COUNCIL, not like the lawyer.
Oh. Thank you. It's one of those things spell check misses.
Yeah.
It's because you spell it right. And then, based on our previous conversation, I'd added the sentence, the last sentence of section 5. A previous feasibility study for a public safety complex was completed in 2015 and did not move forward at that time. This study is available on the Town of Southampton webpage for reference.
I thought that was excellent.
Yeah.
So, here's what it is, they can look it up. So the next one, scope of work, I had said Appendix 1 describes the properties. What information do we want to give on the properties based on the current status of the privately owned properties? Any thoughts? It's just a little funny because we haven't negotiated or really even started discuss. I mean, in theory, Labrie and Gieler have formally expressed interest in having their property evaluated in theory, right? I mean, they expressed interest in engaging with the town, so it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that we'd want some portion of this study done on their property before we make a determination, because the designer may say, oh, this site with the slope is gonna save you $50,000 over this one, whatever. I don't know, I'm just wondering, are we going to share those 2 addresses in this, or at what point?
We didn't do that in the senior at all, did we? No.
You didn't include, but the town-owned addresses were included in that one, I believe.
Really?
You probably sent it up before the letters back, right?
Pardon?
Was it sent out before letters came back?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, but in terms of engaging a firm, it wasn't part of the feasibility.
So do we want to just not include the addresses? But I do think it makes sense to let them know that some of them have existing like.
At what point will we let the senior center, once we select a firm, at what point do we give them the addresses of the sites?
When we select the firm.
Okay.
But in this RFQ, it goes down to task 2 is site evaluation. Provide a preliminary assessment and evaluation of existing site conditions, so.
But isn't there steps? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
first is to select them
Well,
and then give them more specifics.
Understood, but, okay, all right, so that doesn't have any, okay.
Maybe we just, not include that for now.
Okay. So we'll say the feasibility study will evaluate up to 5
Yeah.
properties. And we'll get rid of the whole described in Appendix 1 thing. I do think it would make sense to say something that some are, vacant, undeveloped land and some have existing town built structures. What do you guys think? Or we don't have to?
Yeah, sure.
It's a tough call. It'd be nice to have them know that we're, looking at tearing down
Right.
Yeah.
town stores or possibly knowing they have to do an evaluation of the existing structures, really don't have to do that at all.
I mean, you may involve somebody different to evaluate an existing building, like the fire station, than you would have to engage if it was just a flat piece of land. So I tend to think we should say something about how some of these evaluations include, the highway department for example, that includes trying to figure out the best use of some of those structures and work with Randall, and that whole thing, which is different than just a vacant lot.
So the question is, give them more or less information. That's really what you're coming down to.
Yes.
More information, will they get a better proposal?
Right, well, we've already determined, I guess, that we're not going to give them all the information, because
No.
we're not giving them the addresses. But do we want to give some details?
That's the question. Yeah.
What did senior center do?
I thought they gave the addresses for town hall, for for the town-owned properties. I thought they'd included them.
Because once we find somebody and actually, have a better idea of what the addresses are going to be, that's the part that they're going to look at specifics in regards to demolition, elevation, those sort of things.
Yeah.
So honestly, it would seem at this point, as long as they know they're going to have to evaluate multiple sites, it wouldn't matter which those sites were.
I'll just throw in that in the Williamsburg RFQ, under the scope overview, it does say, analyze, including wetland issues, suitability of possible locations for facility, and make recommendations, including benefits and challenges with each site. And then it does list the various parcels.
With
Senior
addresses.
Center, this is what it says under scope of services, number E. Perform a preliminary assessment of the suitability of using either town or privately owned existing buildings and/or sites to determine suitability for repurposing and/or expanding for use as a senior center. Up to 5 locations shall be evaluated and are as follows: existing senior center, existing fire station and property, old town hall, police station, up to 2 additional buildings and/or sites that have not yet been identified.
So
That
they
sounds
You're right.
gave as
copyable.
much information as. So, I guess my original thought had been we follow that we
Yeah.
give the
That sounds
town-owned
good.
information. But, and that was kind of coming back to the reason to differentiate, is if we're giving information on 2 of them, but not giving information on 2 or 3 others, there has to be a reason why. Otherwise, and the real reason is because we're giving information on the town-owned properties, but we're not ready to share information on the privately owned properties. Not that we have to state that, but they'll kind of figure that out.
Could we sort of follow that same procedure about the first 2 that you mentioned, but the existing fire station and the town DPW yard, and up to 3 additional vacant sites?
Oh, I like that. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good
That's a good
idea.
idea.
Because the other 3 sites, or the other sites don't have structures.
Correct.
Yeah, and they wrote 2 additional because I think that the Harley Davidson place was still a consideration for them at the time of this. That's why they put buildings in or sites.
But we're just looking at vacant lots
They
at
know they
this
have to do
point.
evaluations of buildings on 2 sites, and now don't have to do evaluations on the
Right.
remaining 3.
That's a good idea.
So how do you have that worded, Sarah?
So, let me just open up this other.
Say it again?
So up to 5, so this will be in the scope of work. We'll say the feasibility study will evaluate, and I'll figure out the kind of transitioning wording, town-owned properties, including, and put them as bullets, the existing fire station and the DPW with address, I'll put addresses in there. And then as a 3rd bullet, and up to 3 other vacant properties in town.
Just so you know, it's not officially a DPW. It's Highway Department.
Oh, okay.
I'm asking the engineers this. Does it matter if it's a flat surface, flat vacant lot, or if there's,
Well, that'll be part of their evaluation.
I just didn't know if they needed to know this or not.
No, I don't
Okay.
think so. And if that's the standard evaluation of the
Okay.
site.
Okay.
It will affect the final outcome, it should affect their price proposal.
Yeah, and like in the Williamsburg one, there was a reference to wetlands.
There's a reference in this, under
Yeah, there is. Okay, great.
site evaluation.
Okay.
All right, going to the tasks, task 1 is the space needs assessment. Ed, did you want me to just change this language about the ambulance services director and emergency management service director, or?
I think we clarified that the name, that the positions are still,
So just leave it, even though it's just
The same people.
the same,
Yeah, same people.
so we'll just leave that as
Yes.
is? Okay.
could I ask a question about the following paragraphs before we get to deliverables?
Yeah.
Or are we still on that?
That was
We're
on
still on.
description.
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't know how people feel about this, but it says here, the last two sections, it talks about public safety agencies, including those that may be shared, such as emergency operations center, training facilities, bathrooms, vehicle wash bay, and then it says, and community meeting space. Is that still what people want to put on there? I mean, do you anticipate that the complex will have community meeting space?
I think we actually talked about getting rid of that last
Yeah.
time.
I vote to strike community
Yeah.
meeting space.
We had talked about eliminating that, and I must have missed it. So I'll eliminate community meeting spaces.
Can we add parking? Because that would be a shared thing, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
yes,
sorry.
parking.
Parking.
Do we have the dispatch center in there as well, or no? The
No, but that's,
communication center?
No, but we
I
should-
think the word such as is important, and then when they sit there and do the first
Yeah.
interview with our committee.
Such as is there.
Department heads, they'll understand what their wants. and
yeah,
needs
such
are.
as emergency. Is emergency operations center the same as a communications center?
no.
Or-
No.
No. Okay. So, training facilities, bathrooms, vehicle wash bay, parking, and communications?
But actually, that's the part that talks about shared services.
Right.
So
Is
I
that
don't,
what you want under shared, or no?
oh,
Consider.
Oh, 'cause it is shared, I'm
Communications is
sorry.
listed in the next paragraph.
right.
Yeah, so prepare a comprehensive and complete program addressing each of the following emergency service functions performed by the department, and that has communications in it.
Communications, administrative offices, interview area, booking, evidence lockers, training facilities, and equipment lockers / storage areas.
I think we're gonna have quite a while to actually flush this out in terms of the design.
Yeah.
Um,
Does it make
But I'll
more
get rid of
sense?
the community meeting spaces for sure.
Does it make more sense to replace program on the first line with proposal?
Okay. Prepare a comprehensive and complete proposal. Yeah, I think so. Addressing each of the emergency service functions.
I think program is probably the better
Really?
terminology.
Okay,
It describes what needs to be done.
okay.
Okay, I will leave program and strike community
Evaluate
meeting
the
spaces.
program, cut it down.
Okay.
Are you adding parking
Yes.
up top?
Do we address anywhere in here the fact that we may want a joint site with the senior center? How is that getting rolled into
Oh, that
this?
is a good question. That we should talk about. I don't know. It's not addressed currently.
And how do you go about
The
addressing?
same design firm should not be doing both of those.
Even if they're on the same site?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
they're two specialties, unless that firm has the ability to do both. I mean, I'm not an architect, so.
Unless they have like departments that people who specialize in both.
Right.
But
I think you're-
Yeah, I will say that I don't think a single, did you see anybody that did a public safety complex from all of the history of all the, in the 5 proposals we got? There were libraries, there were community centers, senior centers, but I don't think there was almost a single public safety complex.
I don't,
I know in Belchertown, there was one that built both police and senior.
Oh, really?
But doesn't mean we'll see it here, especially if senior doesn't have any, but again, it has, is public safety.
you might put something in there that, let's say,
Site.
conceptual design for the site may need to include consideration of inclusion of more than one town building or department.
so do we want to put that in background and existing conditions, or where does it make sense for that to go? The space needs assessment? Any thoughts? The scope of work?
I think they need to know what their feasibility study includes, so they just put the blinders on and do their public safety complex, or do they need to have the ability to roll in coordination with possibly a senior center.
I think that's a pretty big surprise once you get it, if you didn't know that that was a
Yeah.
possibility,
Yeah,
to be
I think
honest.
so too.
Shared parking, shared traffic patterns.
So that sounds like it should go into background. Because
That's what I was wondering as well. So,
Yeah.
so site may also incorporate other town facilities to be built. I think we should just clarify as well, though, that this feasibility study doesn't include those buildings.
Right.
Like, it doesn't include,
Right.
so, additional town buildings, additional town what did you say out there?
I'd say facilities or building and departments.
To be built concurrently or in the future?
What's that?
To be built concurrently or in the future, or leave that
Yeah.
out? Mark, you're making a face like you don't think I
Yeah,
should say that.
something to designate they might be built concurrently, that's, we call that battling bulldozers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you're in each other's laydown area and the whole, like,
it sounds to me like this will cause more confusion.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what if this other public building is a library or a, health facility of some sort, or a, I'm just throwing out ideas that they'd want to know what those other buildings would be.
Whether it's a giant traffic generator or it's a
Yeah,
sewage treatment plant.
marijuana grow facility.
do we want to say consideration is also in progress for a new senior? I mean, the thing is, I don't know exactly what's on the reminder and stuff, but I think you can go online and find some of this information in terms of, I know the reminder was at our joint meeting. I didn't read there was an article that came of it or whatever, but I just mean that I think we should say something.
Issues where you're going to stop.
Right.
And somewhat might be dictated by the size of the parcel. I mean, if you ended up with a large parcel, you might not only consider a new senior center concurrently or at some time in the future, but what about an affordable housing complex if it's
Yeah,
large enough?
That's a good
So-
one, yeah.
So do we want to just not say anything? I'm a little confused.
I mean, maybe that's always open no matter what. And like I said, a 30-acre parcel, you're not going to use 30 acres for a public safety.
That's true, and we're really only going to combine these most likely if it really makes
It's
sense
a
and there's
large
plenty of
parcel.
room.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of where we're headed anyway. We've already said that it doesn't make sense for them to be a building. It would be two buildings, maybe with a shared,
Right,
some level of parking or something. But
right, that's true.
so maybe we'll just not go there for now?
I think,
Battling bulldozer sounds like a good TV.
Okay.
So don't put anything more in the background than what's there.
Are we good with that?
we were talking about coordinating the project, so I just didn't know if it should show up here or not. But I think we're probably okay. I think it's for more common sense that we may put other public facilities on there, whether it's tomorrow or 20 years from now.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. Okay. Deliverables for task 1. Any comments on that?
You said written report. I mean, are we going to have, each one of these have a separate submission, or is it in the end, when they get through all the tasks, they're going to give us one joint report? And I think we sort of want the deliverables from the site evaluation first, so we can determine which site to go forward with before they go to more detailed.
So I think that, so task 1 is kind of, part of it is figuring out exactly what size building. So I think task 1 and task 2 could probably be done concurrently, the space needs assessment and the site evaluation, and then we'd want that report before we moved forward. Agreed?
I think so.
So how do we want to say task 1, task 2, and then maybe get rid of the deliverables for task 1 and in the deliverables for task 2, say after task 1, task 2 are completed, report to be provided.
Looking for these guys here, at the end of task 1, where they're gonna do the needs assessments, they're gonna interview, say we need X number of square feet for different things, they'll come up with the bubble diagrams. There's gonna be some back and forth, and they have to give us something, and these people something to say, yeah, you know, these guys said they want 5,000 blockers, and the architect says, no, we can give you 5. There's gonna be some back and forth, so there has to be something deliverable that people can work with to hone it down, and after they get through task 1, which chooses their size and everybody's happy with it, then they use that agreed upon size to go and do the site evaluations. They have to plug that building into
So
something.
maybe leave the deliverables as they are then, with task 1 deliverable, which is a written report that would be summarizing the size, the, you know, bubbles for each part of the facility. And then after that, site evaluation would also have a written report, because we obviously then would need to make a decision on 2.
Going back to what I was talking about, the task 1, do we have them understand that they're going to prepare some report? They're going to sit down and call the word negotiation, that's not the right word, to figure out, hone in what the appropriate task 1 size is, how we're going to agree upon what the appropriate size facility before they start the feasibility study on the site.
So should we, above the deliverable, at the end of the description, have something about how task 1 includes meetings? I mean, it says in consultation with all emergency department heads. Should we add something about, you know, anticipate 2 to 3 iterations with emergency department heads, you know, back at, like, that they should anticipate some level of iterations of this, of course. Should we add something about that, or?
I missed the word in consultation, I guess that can be.
Yeah, because I don't think there would be some assumption that you would do that. I mean, that's what they did last time.
Yeah.
Right.
We said, we went over, you know, appropriate, you know, office space, this and that, and the only thing really that will probably change much will be the municipal, the outside, the community room.
Okay. So do we think
I think in
it's,
consultation sort of encompasses what.
so it's okay as is?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
So there's no change to description or deliverables?
Description, I just have getting rid of community meeting
Oh, yeah, that
spaces
one,
and
yeah.
adding parking and
Yeah.
communications.
And where does it say in consultation?
The very, up at the beginning of description, it's like the first
Oh.
sentence.
William, just for information,
Yeah.
Williamsburg does include, anticipates meetings with you know, that the designer, the selected designer shall anticipate meetings with the Public Safety Complex Committee.
Okay.
I don't know, and it would be rather with the department heads,
Yeah.
but that would,
Down at the end of this whole section, of section 6, we have the consultant should also anticipate attending, in addition to the town meeting, a minimum of 5 meetings with the committee and/or the public.
that's different from meeting with the department heads, though, I think, isn't it, to discuss needs?
Yeah, unless it was a portion of the committee.
And the fact that they have to consult with us, and we just kind of defining.
Yeah. I think it's okay as is, because it's captured, they have to have some
Okay.
meetings. Site 2, task 2 site evaluation, the only thing I'd had highlighted was a 5, so we'll leave, I'll change that instead of for a total, for up to. Any comments on the description or deliverables for task 2?
I would like a definition of what 21E report is. Mark, you mentioned that in your
Yeah, I
notes.
was passing last time, but it's
Yeah.
21E-phase 1.
And what does that, could you
That's essentially an
define that?
assessment of whether or not there's hazardous materials on the site. And it's a very, phase 1 is a very preliminary evaluation of the site.
Shallow excavations?
No physical, it's just a visual and records check for this parcel.
Okay. Okay.
Does it require definition in this? But others would know what it
Anyone
was.
who is an architect
Would know what
would
that was.
understand what
Okay.
21E phase 1 is. If they don't, they shouldn't be replying.
You can also, I Googled it because I didn't know that much, and you can like, it comes up on Google and stuff, so you should.
Should I care to?
What?
Should I care to?
No, I know, I'm just saying it's,
That's good, yes.
because I didn't know either.
I have another comment about that. Are you moving
No,
on?
go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to ask, let's see. So it's listing various things, including subsurface soil conditions. Mark has pointed out that each of the sites that is being evaluated are Zone 2. Is that going to make a difference? Should they know that information? And so here's my question, subsurface soil and water conditions?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, subsurface is a good question.
a tough question. I mean, how far do you go? You go out there and do soil borings every 5 feet to find out what the ledge profile is, or check geologic information on USDA soil maps. I think that's a...
But I'm going to persist with just this question. Is it important to let them know that all of them are in a Zone 2 aquifer protection grid?
I don't think that's critical. That's something that's easily determined and doesn't really make that's
It
going to be a
doesn't.
line item in their analysis that they should provide. It's not something that would affect their proposal as to how detailed it should be.
Does it affect cost in any way?
No.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
One other question you had on wetlands verification survey. I'm not sure what that means.
Is that like a
You have
wetland delineation?
Someone determine whether or not wetlands are on site, or actually do and go out, flag the wetlands, get it verified at the Conservation Commission with a survey with an RDA. It's a lot of cost differentiation between confirming whether wetlands are approximate wetland delineation, or we're going to get the exact detailed approved delineation from the Conservation Commission.
It would seem since
It's
all
a
this
different
is,
cost perspective, significant cost difference.
everything else is rather general right now. It would seem as though just a determination
Yes,
to me that whether they're wetlands or not
Right,
to
I
be
think the
considered.
wetlands verification survey is up to, do they actually go out with a...
Is it a true wetland delineation?
Licensed surveyor and get the flagging, or they have somehow confirm whether or not there's wetlands on site.
So how do we want to clarify that? Do we want to clarify it to be less work or to be a true wetland delineation? We probably don't need to do a true wetland delineation.
think that
Maybe
is-
it's a preliminary wetland evaluation.
This is on all 5 sites.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like there's on this site here, we're really following the letter of law. They'll have to get someone, a wetland specialist, come here and flag all the wetlands within 100 feet after the survey, go to the Conservation Commission, get it approved, even though we're not going to be really involved too much with the wetlands on this site.
Well, what was done for the last one, because there is a wetlands study that had been done for that. At what phase was that
But
done?
that expires after 3 years.
No, I understand that. I'm just wondering historically for that in 2014 or 15, how extensive was the request for the feasibility study? Because there is a wetlands determination in that feasibility, in the finished feasibility study there.
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, because I'm not sure if the feasibility study included a flagged wetland delineation or not, but it should, because that site certainly has some concerns.
I remember in the material that Charlie sent out when this committee was first formed, there was a wetlands map or something there. It was fairly defined, but
But there
that could have been different. That could have come after the feasibility study, though, right?
Yeah, because it was,
Or perks,
they also were looking for perks, was another thing. And that was another concern that was sort of So the perks were done, where if they were just looking at sites, they would do a general probably for 5 sites until we specifically focused on one. And then they may recommend delineation if it's anywhere close to wetlands, and maybe it's just part of what they do anyway. I think for initial assessment, they would probably recommend a wetland delineation if there isn't one on record, which there isn't, if it's 3 years.
Maybe just call it a preliminary wetland assessment rather than a wetland survey.
Yeah.
Word survey is a very specific technical term. Which can,
Yeah.
Does it need to say preliminary? Could it just say wetlands assessment? Or is that not specific enough?
I don't have a strong opinion on that. But
I think saying preliminary wetland assessment is
Okay.
probably what we're looking for in all 5. Subsurface soil conditions, we're not expecting them to go dig holes, right? So
No.
how do you, I think we should probably actually strike that. I think we should leave the others. Stormwater drainage issues you could figure out from walking it, and location of utilities and vehicular access.
Well, as part of their stormwater, they will probably do some conceptual ideas of what the soils are and which affects your drainage design.
Okay.
So that's good.
And that information, soil conditions are available on maps, right? Soil maps?
Yeah. But
I think part of
general.
that might have been to do with the ledge, too.
Yeah.
But that would be more site-specific once we, go for one site over another.
So,
No, it then does just go right on to say preliminary soil evaluation, wetland delineations, and land survey with topographic data is available from the town. So that's,
That's written in the C somewhere. What?
that's the last
No,
sentence.
it's written in the
Same
section.
session, same section.
In the
So-
proposal.
Draft.
Yeah, that's the final sentence in that description of the site evaluation. So
is that just for town-owned properties, though?
That was probably left over from when they did the evaluation here at the town site.
So should we just strike that, or should we say for town-owned properties?
no, strike it, I would think, because we're asking for it from them.
Yeah, I think it should be strict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Struck. It's-
Okay. All right, sounds good.
They can do their own code rules.
Yeah, no, I agree, that's not fair. So deliverables for this one, I was just thinking we should clarify that we'll want some copies at this point as well, because this report will go to us as the committee and the select board for selection of 2 final sites. So I was gonna say written report, and a site analysis matrix, based on the development of the, so this needs to be reworded a little bit. Written report confirming the adequacy of the sites considered in a site analysis matrix. Review of the 5 sites, or any thoughts on that? Maybe we want more than just the one matrix. I assume there'll be a small, short report for each site.
Did we just write written report?
What?
Just write written before report?
Yeah. Written report confirmed, and then based on the development potential site, and then how many copies do we want of this one? Do we want to do 3 hard copies as well?
I think so.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question? I'm sorry, before we go on to 3, can you just go back from 1 for 1 second? Under deliverables, it says a written report summarizing the space needs of all emergency departments, and it doesn't include communications. It says police, fire, ambulance, and emergency management. Do you want to specify communications?
I think it should, because that's significant.
That's
Okay,
Yeah,
so we'll
That's
say
under
that's under
task 1.
deliverables, task 1.
add communications, and then right after that, it says common space needs
Need.
shared with the community and other
That's
municipal
the other part I was gonna
departments.
say.
Should we strike all of that?
Yeah.
Because, you know, I mean, the public using the facility or at least coming in to do operations or business, I think it's covered with the last sentence, square footage, blah, 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 and it says for daily department operations. I think that's probably good enough.
Right, but that would be somebody coming
Yeah.
in to interact with police or fire, not like for
Right.
some unrelated
Yeah.
Right.
meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, add communications and strike the next part of that sentence. Task 3, schematic design plan. Any comments or thoughts on this one?
Are we asking for 2 schematic plans?
Yes.
We are, we're gonna have to do 2 feasibility study schematic plans.
That's
On
what it
2
currently
sites.
is asking for, yes.
Okay, that's my question.
Whether or not that's what we should proceed with is is a discussion, but that is what I think what we had decided last time.
I think that's reasonable.
I mean, a lot of it's copy and paste from one to the other. Some of it isn't, but. So you had a question though, I think, Mark, or somebody had said, when are we going to narrow it down? Are we going to bring, did you ask this, when are we going to narrow it down?
The deliverables, you know, what it says, and sketches to be used for public forums and presentation at town meeting. My take on it, are we going to present 2 sites with 2 schematic designs at town meeting?
No.
That's what I got from reading this particular paragraph.
No, that is what it kind of, yeah. I think we need to discuss that. Do we want to just go down to 1 property after task 2 and just do 1
I
schematic?
think it's going to boil down.
It'll boil down, I think.
Yeah.
So do we want to do a schematic design for 2 or just,
We start with 5, they do a feasibility study and say, okay, here's a matrix and here's all the, you know, site 1 is garbage, site 2 is great, site 3, and then somebody has to vote, and I assume it's between us and the select board.
Select
and say,
board,
let's get it boiled down to 1, I'm assuming.
so do we want to change and say after task 2 is completed, the Public Safety Building Committee and the Select Board will narrow site selection to 1 property?
I have a
I mean,
question.
the ultimate goal is to get a package that we can, you know, put on town meeting agenda.
Right,
And
the
how
last thing we want is to
transition
give somebody something else to debate between 2 different sites.
Right.
I don't think we need to.
from- So we've got to get it down to 1 somewhere.
But it doesn't wouldn't you say that perhaps that the select board needs to have a couple of sites because there will be pros and cons for each site? Not one site is going to be perfect, I wouldn't imagine, it might be. And so the select board will have to weigh the 2, and I'm assuming that the building itself will essentially, they'll be making 1 proposal that could be put on either.
You can't take a building and put it on one site, pick it up, put it over here.
Well, no, that's true, but doesn't, I mean, there has to be a way, I would think, for the select board to evaluate which of 2 sites is going to be most, not only the select board, but the chiefs as well and the committee, which building configuration and which site will be preferable. I would.
I agree. I think we said we're going to build a matrix. I mean, 5 sites, there's a matrix, and there's a little pluses and minuses, and probably boil it down to probably 2 sites look pretty good. And then somehow that has to be done to 1. My only comment was, it sounded like they wanted 2 sites at town meeting. So how do we get from 2 to 1?
No, I think but don't they need 2 sites to go to select board?
They need 2 sites, they don't necessarily need 2 building plans.
That, right, I think that's where we're at, so.
Right.
You're bringing the evaluation of the 2 sites forward. Here's the pluses and minuses.
Okay,
Now,
right.
maybe one of those pluses and minuses, after you get through the traffic and the accessibility and everything else, might be, okay, on this site, we can get a, 1-floor building of X amount of square feet on it.
Yeah.
On this one, because of, constraints or whatever, it would have to be a 2-story building that would, come to the same X amount of square feet.
Right.
And because it's two-story, if it's true or not, you get the same square footage, but it might cost you 25% more because of the 2 floors.
Right.
And you gotta have an elevator and this and that.
You're absolutely right. And that's where the chiefs especially, I would think, as they would need their say to see which facility worked most efficiently in their minds too.
It's going to come down to cost, honestly, and what the public will, go for. And so as long as we have a building, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but, okay, that is true, but I imagine you'd still like,
It would be
you know.
nice, but honestly, at this point, we just want a building.
Right, so I think what's gonna happen is we'll get the 5 properties evaluated by this firm. They'll send a recommendation, they'll say, okay, these 2 really seem like they'll work the best and be the least costly, most likely. And then we'll look at it as a committee and probably say, okay, of these 2 or 3 that they say are feasible, we recommend this one. We'll send that all 5, the whole information packet to the select board with our recommendation for the select board's decision. That's kind of how, it would
Makes
work,
sense.
right? In terms of, we would make a recommendation for the select board to decide, given that matrix and the 5 properties. But then, we had said, okay, we'll pick 2 of the 5, but it probably makes sense, thinking about it more, to just go right down to 1, right? Is that?
For task 3?
For task 3. Otherwise, you then do 2 building designs and then have to pick one before you go to town meeting. Are we just wasting money doing a secondary building design?
The building is going to be designed differently based upon the site that's chosen.
Right.
And they're doing a rough site analysis. They're going to put this bubble there. They're going to figure out whether they need a 2-story bubble or it's going to be an amorphous type of thing.
Right, how you get the square footage on
And in
it.
the initial, when they start to figure out what we need for office spaces and truck spaces, that really determines the square footage. So square footage, whether it be on one site or another, it's the same square footage that they'll be looking for. That evaluation's been done in one of those previous segments when they did it in consultation with us. So really, if we get the square footage to meet needs, it really is a matter of whichever one go over best with public.
Yeah.
And that would probably be cost related, and I'm good with that.
Okay. That sounds good. So I think that one other thing we should just keep in mind when we put the schedule together is we're going to need the information on what the cost would be probably on the privately owned properties or at least select board will need that in order to move to task 3. If we're going to say we're looking at the Labreeze property and regular property and we say, okay, this one will be $100,000 less expensive to build on. One of them maybe is going to be donated and one has a fee associated with it. Just to kind of keep everybody thinking about this, I think we would need that information as to what they were going to charge for the property in order to move on to task 3.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's all part of the cost.
Right.
Yeah. We want the cheapest thing we can get.
Right, but I just mean if one has some more development costs but is donated versus one is, and I don't know how that'll play out, but.
Yeah, but certainly a consideration.
I mean, from the designer's perspective, that's just one line on the bottom. I mean, that's more of our burden.
Oh, I agree. It would be the select board really to.
I guess I'm focused on what the designer is going to have to give us.
Yeah, no, that's true. So.
Third line up big here.
Yeah, I agree. So, all right, so we're going to narrow this down to after task 2 is completed, the select board will select 1 property, basically. Agreed?
Is that what you said, or is that contrary to what you just said?
What?
Ed, I was just asking Ed if he was, I kind of heard him say that they're not going to be doing a detailed design, they're just going to be evaluating the feasibility of it being built on different sites. Are you suggesting that we go with 1 or 2 under task 3? Did you say 2?
Me?
Yeah,
I'd say 1.
okay. I thought I heard that you wanted more.
I mean, but that's where the money's going to come in. I mean, they're charging us, $70,000, $80,000. That's where larger.
How much did you put down the ARPA request? 75? Okay.
So how are you editing that? You're just taking off
All I'm doing is
public
changing.
safety
to one.
building?
No, I'm saying after task 2 is completed, the PSBC and select board will narrow site selection to one
All
property.
right, to one.
And then I'm gonna go through and take off S's where needed.
Okay.
For the, okay. Anything else on that, deliverables? I would think the deliverables for this one, the schematic design plan, and then the total project cost estimate and schedule could kind of be one deliverable, one printed thing, task 3 and 4 together, and 5.
Provided should be past tense. Second to last line are deliverables. Provided.
Provided, yes, we provide. Okay. Any thoughts on task 4, the cost estimate and schedule?
Can we, just asking,
Yeah.
prepare a final design schematic plan and report? The plan can be a 24 by 36 piece of paper,
Okay.
for a description that goes with it. I think that's probably intuitive, but
Yep, design and report.
Good to be specific.
Okay, so you're deleting the S from plan and just saying and report under the applicant's proposal.
design plan, I mean, usually plan, I'm assuming the firm is professional, they provide a set of plans.
Yeah.
Cindy, I think it's
I
a
think we're-
prepare final schematic design plan and report.
Yeah, that's right under deliverables, prepare final schematic design.
Oh, I see. All right. I see where you're at. Okay.
Anything else on task 3? And it's 6 o'clock, coming on 6 o'clock. Still have it, we're not gonna get through this in 10, 15 more minutes. So what's everyone's thoughts? I guess it's gonna take us another meeting to fully go through this.
I would like to pause.
Okay.
We do it next Monday? Is
Yeah, 29th.
Yeah, so if we go 2, we get into Labor Day, and then we're going 3.
So we just do one.
Yep, that's fine. 29th, everyone good 29th at 4:30?
Yep.
So we're going to end after task 3.
That's the backup date for the senior
31st.
center proposals. So we'll hope that we go for the first date then. You said one's confirmed, but not the other one?
Correct. Not only did Abacus confirm, but they wanted to know if they could choose the 4 o'clock slot.
I imagine both of them would want to, but I guess they
so
would.
are you saying there's a potential conflict with some other meeting?
Possibly. But that's okay, we can just catch up next time. So we chose 2 dates to have the interview with the 2 companies. The first date is September 1st.
Yeah.
One firm's confirmed, the other one hasn't. The backup date was actually prior to that, which is September 29th,
I see what you're saying.
for 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock. So we're hoping that the second company confirms for the first.
Okay.
All right. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to discuss while we're...
I'm confused. What, are we scheduling dates for the next meeting?
We're going to meet on next Monday, the 29th. And then we'll go to every 2 weeks after that, because we'll skip Labor Day. So rather than going 3 weeks right now and then going every 2 weeks, we'll go 1 week and go 2 weeks. Because we're not going to Labor Day.
I just found the important part of the scoring was, once you decide what you're going with the scoring, you have to go with the scoring. So when it says highly advantageous, because the next part we talk about
Yeah,
is about the scoring. So it's just important to know that you can't change it after you get proposals.
Because somebody's is shiny in a different way, you mean? Or you like
Exactly.
something they have that you didn't think about?
Exactly.
ones that hopefully won't have some good stuff that you come from senior center. From if you get over there.
Yeah,
Maybe
there's-
that's ours.
Other things you think we should add for scoring criteria?
A lot of things fell into the scoring that said a complete proposal, well put together. You know, I kind of like. I'll just give you an example. One of the proposals didn't change the town of Southampton, and it said City of Attleboro.
Oh, that's pretty bad.
That's bad. One of them misspelled professional. But I'm just saying that they were
Somebody
good
got fired
proposals,
the
though. I
next
mean, it was
day.
just an oversight. It's always good to have somebody else read it, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, there was there wasn't, you wanted to kind of give somebody else more credit because of something, but you have to stick with what you decided. So since we're going to be looking at that next time, I just thought I'd mention that. In case there's anything that we want to really make sure is scored.
Be sure you have proofread this before you send it.
Well, I know on the occasion I've written minutes, when I put it into your format, I've had to catch myself by not changing the
Oh,
date.
right.
It's easy to overlook,
Yeah.
small things like that.
That's a good point.
All right, well, thanks.
All right, anything else?
As far as minutes go, because there's so much conversation here, I think you and I better, well, I can listen to the tape, but I want to make sure I capture what we specifically changed, because you're doing it.
Well, you're
Okay,
Okay.
I'm gonna update the Word document.
Okay, okay.
Oh, that was my intent, unless you want.
Okay, but we don't want to attach that as an attachment to the minutes. The updated one, we could.
We could.
All right.
That'd be
And then the
simple.
public sees the work that's being done, okay? Because I post all these, okay.
I
Do that as
can
an
change,
an attachment.
and I can do it, I have to figure out exactly how, but I know I can do it in the edit function in Word and like show it as like, I should be able to do that, like highlight all my changes.
Highlight would work, or,
Yeah.
yeah, something like that.
Or like put them in red or
Sure.
whatever, so that all the changes from a certain meeting, and I'll like update it and.
Well, thanks for doing that.
Is the RFQ an attachment already? It's not because I'm the only one that's editing my town government, so nobody else added that.
I don't-
This will be the first time it'll be added.
Okay, that's
Okay,
fine.
so that's fine. You understand what I'm saying? You know how you can attach things
Yeah.
to my town government, which I'll take care of that.
Okay,
Thank you very much for doing minutes.
All right, do we have a
Okay.
motion to adjourn?
So,
Second?
Actually, be very careful, and I probably would suggest you do not put the RFQ out there so people can see it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Because what will happen is if the architects find out it's there and they grab it from there, I cannot keep a plan holders list to send out addendums.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not about, the other thing with the RFQ is
all right, okay.
the document I have has all these dates in it that they're just the senior center dates still. So it would be very confusing if you didn't.
All right, so we won't. So
Yeah.
I'll just do what you did with the minutes last time. I'll just do some bullet points of discussion and, okay, because I've taken notes.
Are you going to send us the draft or put it up on the Google Drive before
Yes.
Monday?
Okay.
The second half we're reviewing won't have changed though.
Right, that's true.
So I will try to get it, but it probably won't be till the weekend is all I mean.
Okay,
So
no
all that
problem.
gets
You're right, I forgot.
updated, we won't be reviewing the updates yet.
Okay,
Hopefully.
we'll just be picking it. Just remember, we need 48-hour notice for the meeting.
Yes, I will do that part.
Okay,
All right, sounds good.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.